As more businesses and operations are opened in the city by people who aren't necessarily from here, issues of inclusion, exclusion, intentionality, and etc. are presented. We want to discuss that dynamic here tonight.
We tend to be invisible, African Americans. I think it is a way of coping with the tension of the new reality here in the city that we tend to just not be seen.
Race has been a factor in so many things here, from where we live, to where we shop, to where we go party, to what we perceive as bad, what we perceive as good.
The other two businesses that I'm partners in, having 4 or 5 partners, it was sort of difficult to convince them to try and do anything here because people are nervous about Detroit still.
Detroit is referred to as a ghost town, although there are 700,000 people who live here. The downtown area, I've read accounts in which it says that there's no one downtown. There's always somebody downtown. I think that some of the dialogue has to be opened up regarding what does it feel like to be a native Detroiter and regarded in this way.
We have to acknowledge the historical legacy when thinking about how to move in a new direction. We don't have to be trapped by the historic legacy, however.
What are the ways in which we would tend to marginalize or stereotype young whites who come to the city? We have to look at that as well.
That feeds a lot of the systemic problems that we face, whether that's institutionalized racism and discrimination and just a lack of historical understanding of the problems that we're dealing with.
You know, that Detroit was once a thriving, prosperous, industrial place, and then blacks became the majority, tore the city up, and now we're here to save it. That is an underlying narrative of a lot of what goes on in the city. And I say that whites are not here to save Detroit. Whites are here to be saved by Detroit.
And I have to follow that.
I think we have to remind ourselves of the context in which we have this conversation. There is the layer of generational differences, and there's a layer of resource differences.
Because we believe that there's, even beneath kind of like the media as a tool for making our community organizing work stronger, it's this tool for transforming relationships. And that at the core, our relationships in this city on so many levels, internally, interpersonally, and within communities are broken.
I don't think it's natural. I think you have to do it intentionally, and I think that's what this conversation is about.
See, our collective memories of places are different here in Detroit. See, there's a lot of summoning of some of the good old Detroit, that kind of sepia tone Detroit, that everybody worships, when you come new to Detroit, this worship of the old Detroit. An old Detroit that when I walked into Hudson's, my mother made sure that I didn't get myself embarrassed or in trouble by trying on shoes or trying on a hat because she knew that we weren't allowed to do this. This is in my lifetime, and I don't regard myself as what you would call an elderly person. Okay, I might be older than some of y'all, but I'm not old.
We intentionally, when we do our immersions around social justice issues, give more voice to people that are just residents from the community who aren't uneducated, they're just differently educated. Just because they don't have a master's degree in urban planning doesn't mean that the woman who's lived in the neighborhood for 50 years doesn't have anything to contribute. She probably has more meaningful information to contribute than the person that went to planning school in Portland.
When you look at the population, you look at the fact that this city can hold over 2 million more people. You've got to recognize that, okay, all of us may be the quote-unquote minority. If you're looking at it like that, I mean, truth be told, who knows what this city's going to look like as that happens?
You could probably, if we all went around the room and said, who are the people that are really making change here? Who are the doers? We'd all have like the same short list of people, but that shouldn't be the case in a city that has 700,000 people, and there should be tons tons of different people involved in that process.
People of different colors and places, should they be concerned with intentionally, immersing themselves in other cultures as well?
You're going to be who you are, so, you can't be afraid of that. But we do have to diversify and get to know one another.
Things that we did to try to be really intentional, be really inclusive. One, obviously, hiring from the community, like you mentioned, was super important to us, was finding people that lived in the city and were from the city. But secondly, and I think just as important, was finding people that weren't just like me.
There's a certain level of that that feels like blackmail to me. There's a certain level of which it is really about how you are treated.
Storytelling, it's not really enough to just tell our own stories, but that process of media making as a community is fundamentally a transformative process when it involves deep listening.
Let's have this conversation continue and not just be about the people that showed up today that want to have these conversations.